Hello, hello. This is the 146th Test from the Future, an experimental podcast from the year 2224, which we are sending from our present to yours. My name is Dirk.
And my name is Simon.
And we're putting the past in podcast. And we've been putting the past in podcast for 146 episodes.
Give or take, yeah.
And we got an email that kind of pointed out the fact that we haven't mentioned for a while anything to new listeners.
True. Like we had our 2-year anniversary some time ago now, where we did that was a pretty good point for new listeners, where we explained what we were about. Mm-hmm. But okay, by now that was many weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. So people who started to listen to our podcast with this particular episode,
they might not know what's going on.
Exactly. I mean, great that you're there and happy that you're giving us a shot, but you might not really understand what's going on. And in the beginning, in the first couple of episodes, we kept explaining that. But of course, it was a bit of repetition. At one point, we were like, okay, so by now everybody understands. Mm-hmm. But then we got an email about this, and I thought I'd just read it out loud.
Sounds good, yeah.
It's from our long-time listener, iPod Irene. Mm-hmm. So our regular listeners.
She's written to us before, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Our regular listeners will know about her. She's occasionally been writing to us. So she writes, "Hey guys, iPod Irene here. I'm the one uploading your episodes to YouTube, remember? Did you know that we have over 30 subscribers? I guess that means nothing to you, but it's pretty cool. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's way more than my iPod channel. Either way, I'm actually writing to you to mention that there is now a getting started section on your website for those who are new to the podcast. And I guess I'm also telling you that you have a website. I kind of made that too. I wrote it from your perspective and embedded your podcast feed in it. Your episodes arrive automatically. I really have no idea how that part works, but please don't change anything. You can't check the website, but I think it's pretty cool. Anyway, that was it. Bye."
Okay. I mean, a little bit cryptic, but sounds very nice of Irene.
Sounds very enthusiastic.
Definitely. She mentions a website, but nowhere the URL, yeah?
Yeah, there's a lot of information in here to take in, and I have like 20 follow-up questions. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I would ask at least one question. So iPod Irene, please do email us the URL that we can mention it in a future episode.
And maybe it's still there.
Exactly,
maybe
that's the thing.
We can actually check it.
Yeah, maybe we can. And even if we can't, if we at least mention it in the show, people 200 years ago will be able to visit it.
Actually.
Yeah.
So there is a website about tests from the future somewhere in the 21st century.
At least, yeah, sounds like it.
And it has a getting started section.
Now that seems interesting. Yeah, like because you were just saying, I mean, that's why we were talking about that before the email, that new listeners may not know exactly what's going on. And the getting started section, that sounds like it could probably explain that. Yeah,
and then we don't have to repeat it every time, or actually not repeat it every time. Mm-hmm. We can just say, are you new to the podcast? Check out the getting started section on our website. Mm-hmm. We can say that.
We could say that.
And 21st century.
We could say it regardless of whether it's true or not. Yeah. But it being true would be nice.
It would also be nice to get like a second opinion. Like, is it actually there?
Oh, right. Anyway, is the website any good?
Yeah, exactly. Is it actually pretty cool?
Mm-hmm. Is it accurate? For our listeners who've listened to all the episodes, is that getting started section actually useful, or is it like misleading in some way?
True, yeah. And if you have any comments about it, makes sense to get in touch with iPod Irene directly. Not necessarily.
Which, presumably there's some way to do that, which we don't know.
Yeah, it's probably on the website.
Probably.
Okay, well, either way, thanks a lot, iPod Irene, for your enthusiasm and for your website. Mm-hmm. And for our 30 subscribers.
Definitely.
Apparently we have 30 subscribers, whatever that means.
Yeah, sounds like a big number.
But today's episode is about something else.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's also actually an answer to a listener question from quite a while ago.
From much longer ago. Yeah, from Felix.
Yeah.
And we just have this little part. So I don't remember what the original whole email was, but we have this line in our notes. So PPS, can you tell me what computer parts you'll use and if there are different types of computers?
Yeah. And I think this was part of a long list of questions that he had at the time.
Exactly. This was the PPS, so there would have been a PS before it, and then
there were many PPSs below, and we answered. I think by now we've answered most of those, but there were too many questions to answer in one episode. We spread them out nicely, and we promised this sounds like a topic for our whole episode. This is that whole episode.
Definitely.
So this is a whole episode about computer parts, and how did we go about it?
So there were two main questions: are there different types, and what computer parts do we use?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's a correlation there, of course. Where we've decided to structure this is we'll talk about the three main types of computers, and then as we discuss each one, we'll say what kind of parts are in them. Obviously, there's some overlap, so we'll focus on the unique ones.
And also, I mean, it's not exhaustive. Like we don't mention every single part,
of course.
But I think it's a pretty good, let's say, sample of elements.
Yeah, and we take our research seriously. So I mean, we did consider we could of course have looked at the products, the product pages, for the different types of computers and read the specs off there.
Yeah, read out loud. Yeah,
exactly. That would have been a bit dry. So instead, we opened up these three computers here in front of us here on the desk. Opened them up, looked inside, did our best to identify what was going on in there.
Exactly. We did basically figure out from what we know, what we can conclude, and there's a bit of guessing there involved as well.
Right, some of the components, I mean, some of them were very nicely labelled, nice and easy. Some of them were a bit more mysterious, like no writing on them at all, so we had to do a bit of deduction.
Exactly. And then some bits we knew because, of course,
we recognized it.
We're in the 23rd century, our tech stuff. But yeah, so the three main computers, I have to admit, I mostly used the Quantum R computer myself.
Yeah.
Which was the first one that we thought to select.
Exactly, that's the biggest and the best, well, depending on your perspective, but definitely when you want to 3D print things, that's what you use.
And that's, I guess, follows from the name, follow up through the Quantum Q computer, which was, I think, a couple of years ago, you still saw it, but mostly it's Quantum R now. I mean, the Quantum S also exists, but it's not...
but that's bleeding edge.
Yeah.
Too expensive for...
Yeah, exactly.
Too expensive for me, anyway.
Exactly. Us normal folk, we wait a couple of years before we get those, so it's the Quantum R is basically the standard at the moment.
Yep.
You picked the other two. Do we mention them already, or do we...
We can mention them by name. So the other two are the Private Compressor and the Pineapple.
Yeah.
But we'll come to those in due course.
And there were some overlapping elements. It was nice when we had them lined up, basically next to each other on your desk.
Yeah.
Where we could say, okay, this and this is basically in every computer. And some parts were really unique to specific.
Right. So I guess, sure, in common between them all, I can quickly mention those components. So sure, they all had a little system on a chip that would look like just a little black square, usually with a model number written on it. So in the case of the Quantum R computer, for example, that was at QR5.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, each will come to the others later, but they basically would have a model number for the system on a chip. They'd also have some supporting components, like some RAM, some storage, and so on. We don't need to get into that.
Yeah. And I think what all of them had were the connecting lines that were both transparent as well as, how do you call it, virtual. Well, how you could see them illuminated, but you could move your finger through it. I'm not sure.
Sure. Yeah,
what
holographic.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, like the holographic lines between the components, like so they were transferring information or whatever. Yeah. And energy.
I mean, that was before we figured. So we opened up the Quantum R computer. We saw that, looked real pretty. Then we figured we should switch it off before we progressed further.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. But that's basically. I'm not sure which one of them or one of these lines came up with that, or if it's been there forever or whatever. I don't know. But they all had it by now. I mean, they also had traditional cables, so I couldn't really figure out one to use.
Right. What was the reason to use the holographic lines versus copper cables or whatever?
Yeah.
Gold traces or the like.
Yeah.
There must be some reason.
Yeah, I guess, or maybe some couldn't handle it, or this for different information, different energy, whatever being transferred. Which one shall we?
Sure. So in the Quantum R computer, components in common, but the main ones that were unique to the Quantum R computer, and like I mentioned, it's really ideal for 3D printing. So sure, there's the syntheticators, Quantum R chips, and the fisheye cams.
Yeah.
And especially those fisheye cams, I mean, they look like spherical glass fish bowls, various sizes in there. Those are what are used for scanning objects that you want to 3D print.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a common is maybe a bit too much, but it's relatively widespread setup for cameras. In general.
At least ones that should be able to see all around them.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, fish goes well with chips.
Indeed, with the QR chips.
I think the syntheticators are also, I think, traditionally in the quantum line anyway. I'm not sure they were there from the beginning, but...
but they were there even before the 3D printing was the Quantum R computer's like speciality. But like over the generations, they've really beefed them up.
Yeah.
They use much more power now. They're much larger. They have these huge heat sinks, loads of fans, all that good stuff. Yeah, but that's... Why do they have all that? It's because it allows both the scanning and the printing of 3D objects in a really good way.
What I also think is interesting that they are really typical to the quantum line. So the other ones don't have it, although their function is relatively clear. So I'm not sure if it is like the technology is so complicated or whatever that the others can't handle it. That the
it's
others
unnecessary.
Yeah, exactly. Or they think we don't really need this, or maybe there's some patent that is really long lasting that prevents them from using it. But the syntheticators are really typical to the quantum line.
Yeah, exactly. And by now it wouldn't make sense to have a syntheticator in a pineapple. Just wouldn't. You could do it, Fair enough. But it wouldn't make sense.
And also, I think also if you look at the design of the computer in general, like to fit a syntheticator in there, you need a bit of a, so let's say, beefy frame, right?
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
it would never work with the pineapple.
No, you couldn't fit it in your pocket.
And it would look so different that it would kind of lose its appeal also.
Yeah.
On the other hand, what I really think is interesting, you mentioned before, the syntheticators, they become bigger and bigger, right? Because they can do more.
Exactly.
And they actually increased in size over the years. But what I think was interesting, if you take it apart, it looks really cool.
Yeah.
And I think it looks really cool, and it is actually unnecessary because it's inside the device. You don't actually see it.
Yeah, right. You mean it doesn't need to look that nice?
Yeah, exactly. But apparently they have, really designers designing the look of the syntheticators, and it's also evolved over the years. So not just the size, but the way it looked. I think...
Yeah, a lot of thought goes into the design of the heat sinks and the fans and so on, which, functionally they need to do a job, but then in addition they're putting a little bit extra.
And also it feels a little bit like an Easter egg. Because who opens up their computer?
Right. Most people don't, and it was a nice treat for us.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I guess fans or just people who like opening up in computers, and then it comes as a nice little unsuspected surprise. And also, what I like is that, at least in the Quantum R computer that we opened up, it was shaped. I'm not sure how to describe it, but let's say very streamlined, as if it was something that was moving really fast, which of course it's not, because it's fixed in there. And it felt like this takes up unnecessary space just for it to look cool, which I thought was a nice gesture.
Yeah, it was fun. Shall we move to the private compressor line?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then actually that's pretty handy because I've got the one here.
It's
that we opened up earlier.
Exactly, it's still standing here.
Still here, so let's talk about what's in there. Well,
yes,
that's one panel. We can just take off the panels and have a look in there.
I mean, we did this up front. I'm not sure if we have the time to take it apart completely.
Not completely, but at least we can, as we're talking about the components, we can have a look in there. So over here you see this is the mini car.
Yeah.
Even, I don't know if it picks up from the microphone. I can spin this. Okay, probably that doesn't pick up, but that's the wheel that spins around. Yeah. And if we turn it over to the other side.
Also, initially, I didn't even know there was a mini car in
right.
in the private compressors. But and also then I thought it's just design, but it is actually completely functional. Exactly. It's like every part of the car is there for a reason.
Yeah.
And it looks like a car.
Yeah, it looks like a little toy car.
Exactly.
But exactly, as you say, it's functional. A bit like in the Quantum R computers, there's some fun going on, with the styling to make it really look like a car rather than just having these spinny bits over here, these platforms over here.
I also think like because everything has a function, and then they were like, oh, this looks almost like a toy car. Let's make it look like a toy car.
Exactly, continue with it. Like when you have plug sockets that look like faces.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Leaning into it.
But it's I think with the Quantum R computer where you open it up and it's a bit of a like surprise that it really looks fancy. In this case, that's what everybody knows.
Yeah.
It's like everybody knows in a private compressor, there's at least one mini car in there.
Yeah, exactly. That's even on the specifications, how many there are and what type they are. And then right here on the other side of it, we already opened up the other panel.
Yeah.
Where is it? There's the booster panel just there.
It's also nicely labeled because I wouldn't have come up with it.
Exactly.
Wouldn't have remembered
it's funny, the label's upside down, but exactly, we can turn the whole thing upside down. There it says the model of the booster panel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what else have we got? Here are the resistors, of course, along there.
Yeah. And that's also for me, a lot of the stuff, I have to admit, it's kind of like I recognize it, but I wouldn't have come up with the name. I mean,
sure, no.
Especially with like the mini car. Okay.
That makes sense.
That I know, but it's like, what was this again? And then
I mean, this booster panel here has a little bit like a spoiler on it, which I guess they're leaning into the car stuff.
And also, I mean, let's say a mini car is really clear what it does and what it's called, like the booster panel. I keep forgetting its name, but from a name, it's really clear what it does. The resistors, I have to admit, I knew what they did.
Yeah, but it's kind of lost now, yeah?
Exactly. And I would feel a little dumb trying to explain while I don't really understand myself.
Yeah.
It's basically making things less productive. Yeah.
Trying it on the back of the private compressor here, there's, like we were talking about the parts inside, there are also these parts on the outside.
Yep.
They're like additions that you can slot in.
I also like it where the other two lines, I mean, we'll get to the pineapple in a second, that they have different LED colors. With the private compressor, they're all purple.
Yeah.
On, off, error, overheating, whatever, everything is purple. Which is like, from a usability perspective, not always ideal, but it's very consistent in style.
Sure, yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Let me put this.
Cool. Nice, spontaneously taking it apart again.
Might as well have.
We did it during research. And
put it back together later, of course.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the private compressor. And then, the last one that we wanted to talk about today is the pineapple.
Yep. The smallest one,
the smallest, and I've unfortunately cluttered up my desk here with parts of the private compressor, but let me just... Here we go. There we go.
Yeah.
That's the pineapple we've got here.
And
this is much smaller, definitely.
Yeah, it is much smaller, but some would argue it's the most powerful one, right?
Yeah.
Because they had to really decide what the device can do, because they want to keep the size as minimum as possible.
Yeah. And okay, our listeners cannot see but earlier we mentioned how in the Quantum R computer, the syntheticator is so large. I was saying, hey, there's no way it could fit in a pineapple, and you can see why now. Yeah,
exactly. Like I can see it. Yeah. It's super flat. I would say it's actually, I was going to say it's about the height of a pineapple, but
maybe a baby pineapple.
Yeah,
a mini pineapple.
It's definitely it's a bit lower than a real pineapple, and it's a bit less wide than a real pineapple. It's definitely way less thinner than a real pineapple. It's thinner than a finger.
Yeah, definitely. It's thinner even than my little finger.
I think it's about the height of a hand. What would you say?
Oh, the height this way around. You mean? Yeah.
And about the width of 4 fingers, maybe.
Yeah, something like
that. Just to give the listeners
give them an idea of the scale here.
Yeah.
Okay, but then we did open this up, we opened it up earlier, not going to do it now. And inside of here are the main unique components, were the organic advanced ultra graphics capsules, so AUG capsules, or ORG capsules.
Yeah.
Organic is the point. Nitroglycerin, of course, to support that. And then also, most importantly, down the sides here, 10 springs on either side. That's it.
Exactly, but I think that the springs they have the double function of keeping everything in place in such a small frame or such a small device, and at the same time take over all kinds of functions that the other computers have different elements for. Yeah. Like a very multifunctional. And of course, in the case of the Pineapple, everything is organic. Yeah. It's like the organic or capsules also used in other devices. And the company behind it make more than just the computers. But that everything is organic. That's
that company. So the Pineapple company, that's their unique selling point, I guess, that they grow all their own components. Yeah. They don't buy them in from elsewhere.
Exactly. And Pineapple is actually one of the main components, as far as I understood.
That's why the company has that name, and they conflate it a bit. The company name is Pineapple, product name is Pineapple. They really want you to know about the pineapples.
Exactly. People keep also mixing them up. And what I think is interesting, like Pineapple is one of the main components. It needs to have, I'm not sure if it's 20 or 30%, whatever, pineapple actually in a device for it to be actually a pineapple device. Right. Yeah. And I think by now, maybe whatever lychees or so are even much better suited. But because it's the company's Pineapple, the device is called Pineapple, they stick to actually the pineapple as an ingredient. Yeah.
I mean, there were knockoff products from, other companies, like you mentioned, lychees or lychees, But okay, today we're talking about the original.
Yeah, exactly, the starters. And I also think what you mentioned, the nitroglycerin before, it does mean that you have to be a little careful.
Definitely. You don't want to go dropping this on the floor. Don't want any sharp shocks to it.
And especially because it's so small, people carry it around a lot more. So people are really told not to shake it too much. If you take it when you go running, don't run too fast. Things like that. But it's, I think by now it's common sense, but especially in the beginning, people were taking it also in elevators, when they weren't using the teleporters to go to the top floor. And that, especially with the initial models, caused, shall we say, problems. Yeah. But of course, a Pineapple also has the most fans, and they basically, let's say, forgive the company the odd choice in component.
For a second there, I was a bit confused. I thought you meant fans like ones that blow cool air. Okay. There's obviously no fans in this thing. But people who really like the company and like their products, and they're very forgiving of these things. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, sure, it has nitroglycerin, which could have been, they could have chosen a bit more user-friendly
something
component.
A bit more stable.
Exactly, but it's Pineapple, so who cares? Let's get the newest model. Yeah.
Hopefully that answered some of Felix, or it did answer Felix's questions. Hopefully he enjoyed listening to them.
Exactly. And if you have more questions, just send us some more PPPPPSs, and we'll happy to try to answer them. Maybe a little faster.
Perhaps.
Depending on the question.
Sure.
And we have a specific question to our listeners as well, right?
Yep, we do.
Shall I mention what this is about?
Please do.
Me and Simon, we had the idea to start a science fiction TV club. And that means talking about science fiction TV. So series, movies, whatever is moving that we can watch.
Yeah, exactly. And part of we were asking this because we have 300 years worth of TV shows to choose from. That's a lot to choose from. So we were thinking our listeners from 200 years ago, they can help us. Also that they'll only have 1/3 the quantity to choose from.
Exactly. And for me, on top of that, we've had 200 years of basically future since then. So it would also be interesting to see what our listeners think is really interesting science fiction. We can watch that
and see how did it turn out?
Exactly. What happened in the meantime? Maybe there are some really cool ideas that we didn't do yet, or maybe some things became reality, or how did 21st century people view the future and so on. And then we don't have to sift through 300 years of science fiction stuff to come up with something. No. And then the ideas in a future episode, you send us some ideas, we'll watch it, and then we will have a future episode and then have the Science Fiction TV Club as an episode.
Exactly.
That's the idea.
It becomes really successful and popular. Maybe we spin it off into its own show, but that's jumping ahead of ourselves.
Or at least repeat it.
So a repeating segment.
Also depending on how many ideas that we get. I'm not sure if we will have the time. Could be that I will watch Mr. Dobalina to watch some of the stuff. And just give me
maybe he can do the episode on your behalf.
Or at least give me the lowdown. So it's like I watch all of these 5 series and just tell me which one I should watch myself. Something like that.
That would work too, yeah.
Okay. Well.
Yep, then I'm going to... So, for people to send us those suggestions, please email us, listeners. Please write to michaellasagna5@gmail.com. Put the subject 146 in the subject. And actually, if you have TV recommendations, put 146-TV. And then put your suggestions in the email there.
We will read it either way.
Of course.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to your suggestions and your emails. But for now, thanks for listening and see you in 200 years.
Bye-bye.